Okay, says I'm live. I really do not suggest watching this because this is going to be my attempt at voice acting. So I plan on discussing all of these topics on separate videos, but I thought it'd be interesting to try to practice at least a bit of the verbal quibble I've been practicing offside and putting it a bit into practice, you see. All because this has been a long standing thing with me where I've been trying my best to learn a variety of various speech patterns and switching it up a bit while at the same time managing practice in a variety of other things in order to facilitate my visual novel. Hopefully that sounds good. The reason why I'm doing this is because I need to listen back to it, right? Because one thing is, when you do a lot of this stuff, you can hear yourself, but you can't really hear yourself. So some things you need to practice. How do I say, like, off? You need to listen to yourself over and over again in order to get the A E I O U's, A E I O U, A E I O U, A E I O U. You get those right, and then implementing them in words, and then learning the variety of different of how they vary, the cadences. I don't know. I put way too much research into the things that I like. Um, so I decided to go through my notes and find something that I could read verbatim. Uh, these are coin. Okay, I don't know if they're official or not, but essentially, on my time while I spent my time online and on a variety of various forums, I've ran across a consistency of a pattern that comes with a variety of people or groups of people that decide to squat on threads. Bit nerve wracked. Um, I like just doing this into my normal voice. Conflicted. Um, I guess to quickly explain it, there were these were posts, like somebody either I'm pretty sure somebody had a document and copy pasted this over and over again. I took screenshots of this. The first, what is this? Technique 5, 6 techniques, right? These are 6 techniques for dilution. These are 6 techniques for dilution. And dilution in the sense of, if there's a topic at hand, diluting it essentially means only speaking of the very finite sense of it, the cover, the surface, never fully diving into the subject matter and explaining anything further than that, since it would be constituted as a sense of spoon feeding, and that's a no-no in the community, or at least that is a form of consensus cracking, where you create these unspoken rules within these communities that then everybody will adhere to because the person in question who put this on forward decided to claim some sort of authority over the rest of the group, and then implementing this rule of how they should just do things. So technique, technique 1, sliding. An operator will create a series of posts to set a tempo, guiding others. In most cases, a team is organized to set the tone of engagement. That would look like, this would usually go with a group of 2 people nowadays, since I've noticed that the only time that they'll hire more people is when it's kind of required. So when elections are rolling around, when, how do I say this? Like when key events occur, occur, when events occur, as in like elections or some big event that needs to have some coercion set to it, they'll hire more people. But most of the time, it's either one or two people, and at most would be three. But they'll only ever have three when it kind of requires control of a good amount of people. Uh, yeah, well, that's a okay. We'll go there later. That's one sliding. Essentially, well, one goes along with two. Consensus cracking. Under alternative accounts or multi-accounting, operators of teams start with a start with the participation in the discussion. Operators will make an effort to establish a set participation while they make an effort towards the truth. It will be written with a weak premise. Now that's like a key. So when they start sliding into the threads and when they start participating in the discussion, they don't do it full heartedly. They'll do it fully knowing that they're about to just crash this to the side because they'll participate with it, add a little bit more of what they'll add a little bit more truth, but they leave it they'll say the truth in such a way where other people can then join in the discussion and to destroy the topic or to debunk the topic at hand. And this happens very frequently. And this is by design, leaving it open for planned criticism. And the criticism's already planned ahead of time. Sometimes these people are just handed paperwork. Not all the time. But there are some instances that I've seen people just read the paper right like word for word. They won't try to flare it up. They won't try to they'll keep it straight to the document. That's a very rare case. But another, because they'll usually hire people that have the wherewithal to make decent arguments and to be able to attack the subject matter. But again, usually all of this is kind of already pre-planned because they'll leave it to a very closed discussion. A perfect example of this would be Zion Dawn. When that whole thing of Zion Dawn was taking off, you could have done that to anybody else, considering that the interaction with considering with the amount of entry points of interaction for communicating or contacting or having a relation or having a business dealing with a current modern day Jew is so high because it's not that they control, it's that they've taught each other that, hey, these are the most meaningful jobs that actually have inherent value in them. Being taught that and being raised with that in mind isn't entirely akin to that. It's just that they've withheld their own traditions. While it's not that they've allowed to the subversion of others, it's just that they've made sure that they've kept a close-knit community versus everybody else who's adopted Americanisms. Just look at what happens to one of theirs when they subtract the cultural understanding of their religion and substitute it with Americanisms. They become a drone of themselves just as much as anybody else does. If you succumb to the idea of Americanisms, the modern Americanisms, like let's go tailgating, let's participate in XYZ ritual, let's participate in all these other pagan rituals that are disguised as American traditionisms, da 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 da. Either way. Techniques for dilution. Technique 3. Effective with technique 1, very useful, keeping readers interested in other things. So as long as it somewhat relates to the main topic at hand, they'll make these other points to, hey, this also relates to this, or this looks like this, or this looks like that. And I should be saying this in a variety of different speeches, or speech patterns, voice acting. But I find it very hard. I feel very embarrassed in front of the camera. Could we turn that off, Biggs? Keep others in a non-productive loop. The objective is resource burn. Burning people out. not with drugs, but with their own thinking. Essentially allowing them to think themselves, right? If they put their focus towards other things, if they just post a series of memes that relate and they laugh about that, that is a form of resource burn. It's essentially burning the amount of interest that people are going to have with these with the topic at hand. And it's kind of why you can say that they're trolls, or you can say it's by design, where portions of false information are just kind of put out there. False tweets, or doctored up screenshots, or like the hella peach fuzzy sort of a picture that they tend to upload, and then you're just like, what's this, mate? I can't even read the text. Either way, that is a form. Mental fatigue, unrelated topics, random trolling, memes, information collection. This is technique 4. This is actually something very popular in the circle of the nobodies. So in paranormal, there is a consistent thread, and they call themselves nobody. It's a form of existence, I assume. Well, they consider themselves nobody. Some people consider themselves somebody. Others consider themselves nobodies. Nah, I don't actually know. I don't know how much of it relates to the film Mr. Nobody. But they have very interesting memes. I haven't necessarily figured them out because their consensus cracking is 100% of the time. There is so many. I don't know how much of it is organic and how much of it is inorganic, but I can tell right now I am getting bit by mosquitoes. Oh my! Either way, I'm not getting bit hella hard. Nobody's consensus cracking, information collection, right? They have memes that talk about how if essentially somebody's asking for too much information, or somebody asks a question that would require too much information out of somebody, right? Essentially trying to figure out where you live, geolocation, like any of these weird like things that people can do on the internet. The nobodies really hammer that home with, yeah, I'm not sharing X, Y, or Z, or I'm not going to show this, or I'm not going to show this, and they take extra precautions with how they share images, wiping. I don't know if anybody knows this, and if anybody needs to hear this, but when you take a picture from your cell phone, there is extra data information that is on that picture. And that extra data just basically shows the resolution, what kind of manufacturer your phone was. In some cases, they show the MAC address of the device. Essentially, the picture comes with just this extra bit of information that will not necessarily be detailed to you. Like, that's something that you see in the metadata of it. Like, just, I don't know how to explain this. But yeah, so some people know how to like wipe that information off the image. And the nobodies really hammer that home with their memes, and they're like, yeah, good luck, Glowy. I'm not sharing that with you because I know you're gonna find me. And I don't know. This is a very interesting thread of people, very interesting kind of topics that they talk about. They talk about what else do they talk about? What's that? Gang stalking. They talk about gang stalking. They talk about a variety of different ways that your phone could get bugged. Yeah, 4chan's a weird place. So typically, this thread or this discussion board, this general, whatever we want to call it, they consistently they get a lot of replies throughout the day. Some of the people are always jaded with the way that they interact with that board because it's either stuck to like discussions of Christos, Catholicism, religion, existential crises, psychedelics. Like, again, this is why I'm like, you can always look at a variety of different sections of 4chan and understand to some degree where there's a general consensus. And by that I mean you can draw a line and be like, oh, the majority of people will believe this one thing because this is a general, right? A general is You go to 4chan and you hit a general. That just means that the discussion of that thread is going to be about whatever the topic is all the time. With the nobodies, it's kind of very difficult to get a decent understanding of what they would believe. Because I believe there's a variety of different players, and they always talk about how there are a variety of people that have information gathering techniques, and they're always posted on that board. This technique is effective in determining psychological status of the reader, posters, as to gather notables of frequent characters. So they will hire analysts, not for the nobodies, right? But when there is a thread, and they would be deemed as mentally unfit, right? In the sense that they might do something very dangerous. They will send people in to kind of decipher who are the characters that are frequenting these boards. They'll build entire psychological profiles on them and kind of try to decipher who this character is, what his motives are, what are his goals, etc., etc. Like this isn't that crazy. Like the FBI did this back in 2011, but either way, let's keep going. into gained any information gained will be used or weaponized. In some cases, the environment is pre-established or controlled, so the narrative or the general itself, the discussion at hand, will be controlled from the very beginning, because this is what you call honeypotting, right? You've essentially created an environment where very peculiar individuals will be drawn to. Moth to the flame, that little blue light that zaps the flies. In some cases, environment is pre-established or controlled, pace is set, atmosphere, there's friendly contact, team leads into where somebody will lead the discussion or lead the whole thing, where if you show me, I'll show you mine if you show me yours. I didn't mean it that way, but still, right? They're talking about like guns, what kind of illegal stuff do you have, this or that, blah, blah, blah. Various analytics can, with set bare topics, use to determine the averages. So they'll use these variety of techniques to determine the averages of the people that are frequenting, and they'll determine their status, and they'll determine if they're people of special interest or not. Why am I talking about this? These are very, right, again, these are techniques for dilution. These were copied. I copied them, handwritten, from posts that I saw on, I think it was 8kun or 8chan at the time. Either way. And the reason why I copied them was, there's more, right? This is just techniques for dilution. I have 25 rules for disinformation. Then I have 8 traits of the disinformationist. 17 techniques for truth suppression. And what's the last one? Then that's my light novel idea. Okay, and this is I don't know why I have this quote from Geoffrey Chance. Geoffrey Chance. The greatest of scholars are not usually the wisest people. Yeah, the greatest of scholars are not usually the wisest of people. I don't know why I have that quote written down there. But yeah, the reason why I wrote down these techniques, at first I just had the screenshots. I'd never actually written them down, like, anywhere. But I read the screenshots one time, and then I remember not going through all of them, and then going back to 8kun. This was like, I want to say a year and a half ago. Yeah? No, 2019, because it was during that election. So while I read these posts, I kept going back and seeing just a variety of ways that people were just guiding and leading the discussion and not allowing for any other form of thought to exist. And I thought it was very interesting because I'm like, whoa, it's almost like I read this somewhere. So, right, Joe Biden, Trump are running against one another. I kept looking into it, and I kept looking further into it. By that I mean I read all of the posts, and by the time I read all the posts, I went back to the forum and I was reading, and I was just noticing that, like, this is going hand in hand in terms of controlling the narrative Sorry. I have family visiting, so if they come back here, I'm gonna be like, oh no. So I just kept tabs on like this, and then I later wrote it down in pen on my notebook because it was invaluable into understanding. I don't know who wrote these down, but it was invaluable in terms of understanding how certain entities were coming onto the board and controlling the thought discussion. And I found it fascinating because, you know what I mean? Like, this is a science. Of course, it's going to be mapped out to some degree. How long am I in? I'm 20 minutes in. I'm barely 20 minutes in. And now I haven't even practiced any of the vocals because I've been trying to explain stuff. Yeah. Yeah, just you know, a back and forth existed with me researching all of this information. Well, not researching it, but like seeing it in practical use because I consistently kept going back to Fortune and I kept consistently getting banned. That was a very great time where I kept finding myself getting banned, and it was because I found a surefire method of counteracting these narratives, these thought processes. And now that I'm thinking about it, now I understand why I'm very like shut offy. When anytime I had arguments with people, I would just shut people off. Like, like you're saying some dumb shit. Like, no. And it was because I was still using these techniques. So, either way, like you might learn this stuff, but at the same time, being able to separate it in your mind is another thing. Just because not everybody's doing it, and some people just do it subconsciously, right? That lets me know that to some degree the way that we were taught communication skills was not entirely conducive to Hey, look, man, I'm hot. All right. You all look funny without more glasses. No, I don't even know. I can't even speak. I can't even speak. Technique 5, anger trolling. Smokeouts. Operator or teams understand averages, right? So this comes in later. Once they understand the general consensus of people, they'll start gaslighting, but not gaslighting in the sense that they'll deny your reality, but they'll start throwing gas everywhere to incite everyone. Operators of the team understand the averages of the groups that they deal with. They create and engage scenarios to single out those who are inclined to violence, right? Setting up this whole thing. And this is where you get the FBI, where they come in and like, oh, we had information about it. And it's like, where did that information come from? It comes from these sort of scenarios where if you add enough gas to the surrounding area of a fire, what do you think is going to happen? The objective and the priority is to identify those specific individuals. The subject is submerged in rhetoric, images, videos, false flags, strong stimulus to deliberately incite intense psychological reaction. And this is to further induce the state of the individuals. So it is kind of why I point to that Zion Dawn movement that I saw an uptick with in the trend of people between the ages of 23 to 30. They all were inclined to believe this rhetoric, and they were constantly like submerged in memes, videos, so-called proof of all of this. But meanwhile, that rhetoric went nowhere, led nowhere, and was never continued anywhere else. And one of the main propagators of that speech now is claiming that Putin is a Zion Putin. Either way, thus allowing a chance to instill or affirm beliefs and behavior, or in this case, a mission. These things are very vicious. So technique 5 aspects. Ops and teams will reverse. So this is something that specifically happened towards the people that were involved with Sabu, right? I'm pointing to an actual physical case, and that was Sabo, or is it? I think it's Sabu. His name was Hector. Essentially, he was inside of a group chat. In that group chat, basically, when he was working with the feds basically got every single person's IP address, reversed the IP address, and found everybody and, put them all in jail, etc., etc. Video example: abuse of authority sets a divide between those who hate or love it. Toss the bait to lead the thread. Establish a line of thinking and establish a position for all to agree with. And this is something that happened with LulzSec, where they kept throwing gas to the fire. They kept allowing to do more and more egregious things to the point that it allowed a case for the feds to, bust in the door. The objective is self-incriminating statements, and that's where the meme came from in Minecraft. Technique 6, gaining control. And by gaining control, this is what I meant by establishing a lead, right? Gaining this sort of reputation by saying, oh, I've been here since this thread, or I've been here since this, or just to establish some form of authority because you're some sort of old fag. Gaining ground, owner, positions, moderators, admins, or in most common cases, the owner themselves. I think a great example of this would be how certain bars in certain areas were owned by the CIA and were entirely used for their experiments with LSD. And that's just one aspect of things, right? What's to say that certain intelligence agencies wouldn't see inherent value in owning certain properties that are forms of entertainment that we would know that, big popular stars or this and that would frequent to, and then gaining information on them, etc., etc. I'm just saying, these are just, you either think about these sorts of things that are important or not important, right? If we know that there's a pizza place that all the politicians would love to go to, wouldn't you? Yeah, let's moving on. High priority targets. Once attained, attitudes, moods, airs suddenly change. Oh yeah. So once certain people or once certain actors gain positions of moderators or admins, they'll completely change their attitudes. And not only that, they'll start pushing for more power, or they'll start, they'll begin to overreach their bounds. It's kind of why knowing this stuff is fucking terrifying. Then there's maintaining the status quo, and by maintaining the status quo, that's the ultimate victory. Because if you can maintain the status quo, that means you can maintain the honeypot for as long as possible. Steering conversation, deleting chat logs. Some very interesting I saw happen in a server. Either way. Steering conversation, keeping peace. The long ploy, and this is always a long ploy, is to collect data, to collect an understanding of the people that you're dealing with. And it's why it's very terrifying to go onto places like Discord, and not just Discord, but anywhere, any chat room, and I've been doing this shit since TeamSpeak and Mumble, and that's stuff. At least Mumble and TeamSpeak were primarily used for World of Warcraft or first-person shooters like Counter-Strike. That would go on. I think the next episode would be 25 rules of disinformation. I know this was supposed to be a thing about me practicing the Quibble. The Quibble. I needed to practice a bit of this speech pattern and make sure that I got this voice acting down, But I don't know if I was able to do that. Yeah, go back to the beginning of the stream for all that. I just noticed that somebody joined. Hello, strangers, and because this is ending now. So yeah, I don't know what to say.